This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 590 for January 5th, 2021. Coming up on today's show, how do you develop compersion? That's coming up on today's show. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Minx, and in the co-host chair today again is Lusty Guy.
Happy and lucky to be here as always.
And just a reminder, this is an adult show about really lascivious things like honesty and communication about sex and relationships. If you're under 18, please stop listening and visit scarletteen.com. Well, I'm really looking forward to our topic today. Somebody wrote in with a question, how do you develop compersion? I'm having trouble feeling it. I thought that was a great topic, especially because I didn't have an immediate answer right away. I had to think about it.
No, I think it's a great topic too, and it'll give me a chance to get on one of my hobby horses. And you know I'm always looking for an opportunity to do that.
Are you getting on a hobby horse or a high horse?
Yes. My hobby horse doesn't have to be high. I can be on a little hobby horse.
Oh my God, no, I'm picturing you jumping around on one of those sticks with a horse head on it and your little 1950s cowboy hat.
I'm sensing another special donation level reward. You got to have the MasterCard Gold for that one, baby.
Before we get on to our topic, though, a couple of things came through as I finally started wading through my email. Ooh, never take a hiatus, folks, from your podcast. Never. You will just never catch up on the email. It's going to be there for a while, so thank you for your patience with me. By way of announcements, my buddy, Sam, that I met at DragonCon many years ago, had a new product he thought might be of interest to Poly Weekly listeners. So I said I'd let you folks know that it exists. And yes, we met at DragonCon, so therefore, what is this going to be about? Oh yeah, it's about role-playing games. So it's called The Book of the Kiss, and it's a fantasy romance source book designed to be system-agnostic. So you can use any tabletop role-playing game you like with it. And the book is for folks who want to add romance to their fantasy stories. So you can get it through a link in the website, which I'll provide a link to in the show notes. It's drive-through, spelled THRURPG.com. And he's offering a special link for Poly Weekly listeners to get the book at half the cover price. And I'll put that link in the show notes, which you can access at polyweekly.com or in the podcatching app of your choice.
Item number 2 in our host chat. I'm afraid by the time you hear this, the event will have been over and we will have missed our mark on that regard. But the title was so cool that we had to include Love is Polytical, a 2-day conference, January 2nd and 3rd, online, planned by Karada House, a queer collaborative art space that explores the boundaries of art, the body, and creativity in Berlin, Germany. Now, this sounded really cool, and we were sorry that because of the length of editing and publication and so on and so forth, we couldn't get a little pump out there in time. But if you hear this, wander over and take a look and see if there's still some records going on and give the organizers some love for doing something that looked pretty cool.
Or if you want to host your own Love is Political, spelled P-O-L-Y, conference. Hey, everything's online these days, so why the fuck not?
All right. So if you are, like some people, really not interested in talking politics, feel free to start skipping forward a little bit here, just for a minute or two. I'm going to bring up a topic that I hear pretty often in our community, specifically among people who have maybe only just started to get into politics or have been into politics for a year or two. It's kind of this thing that happens about your sophomore, freshman year of study. And you say, they're all the same. Every side is the same. The Democrats and the Republicans are the same. Ralph Nader was famous for this. And let me tell you, there is some truth to that notion. If what you're looking for is deep systemic reform to the way we do business, they're the same. Neither the Democrats nor the Republicans are going to be the source of deep reform to the way taxes are collected, the markets work, the way we elect people. Neither of them are going to be the source of reform. That is true. but that's not the only metric that matters. As a matter of fact, we have something like 300,000 cases, new cases of COVID. And I am confident
in the United States
in the last day of reporting. I am confident that if we'd had a Democratic administration, the federal response would have been coordinated enough so that our caseloads and our deaths would not be as high.
You mean they wouldn't have spent nearly a year denying that it even existed and calling it a Chinese hoax?
For example, there are real differences. If you are, for example, a woman seeking an abortion, you understand the difference between living in a red state and a blue state, or a red nation and a blue nation. If you are an economist based in reality, you understand the difference between a Democratic proposed stimulus package to address the reality of what's going on in the economy, and the Republicans stick their fingers in the ears and try to make noise and act like it's not happening. And this is something that has been true across topics, from climate change, even if you're old enough like me to remember the value of seatbelts and whether or not cigarettes cause smoking.
Cancer.
Excuse me. That's right. Cigarettes do cause smoking.
Cigarettes do cause smoking. Well, which came first, the smoke or the cigarette?
Or the cigarette, that's right. Whether or not smoking causes cancer. There was a time when that was a political question. So here's the thing. There are similarities. Both sides are going to be subject to the same political forces and electoral forces that put them in office. Both of them are going to be playing a very similar money game. But lives are on the line around the differences. And whether those lives are trans people being allowed to serve in the military and given medical benefits if they do, women trying to get abortions, minority people living in brownfields being areas where environmental regulations have been loosened to the point to allow commercial activity and poisoning of the citizens, something that happens almost exclusively in minority communities. The examples go on and on and on.
Black people just trying to walk down the street or sleep in your college campus or do anything at all without being killed by police.
Well, I'm gonna be a little bit of a skeptic on that last one because the D's got to come to the table. I'm afraid they got to step up the game on that topic. But having said that, there are real differences. I'm not a Democrat. I am far too data driven and far too left. I fit in Northwest Europe. I'm not a part of U.S. politics in that regard. But I can tell you this: for all their similarities, there are meaningful, real differences between the two parties in the American system that culminate in life or death differences for certain demographics. If the only thing you care about is Ralph Nader's ideas of corporate governance, you're right. The two parties are the same. But if that's the only thing you care about, I honestly invite you to expand your sphere of consideration and start including women's rights, the reality of climate change, and in particular, whether or not we get to have elections. The two parties are different. They're not the same.
If you have questions, comments, or feedback, call 802-505-POLY or email polyweekly@gmail.com and attach an MP3 file with your question. If you'd like to book us for anything that involves a calendar, that includes for online events, email lustyguy@polyweekly.com. And our topic today is how to develop compersion. This was a question from Jade, who wrote in and said, I'm currently completing an assessment at university on compersion and investigating what it is, when it occurs, and how it can be developed. I've been listening to your podcast and find the ideas super interesting. I found it a bit challenging to find answers to the question of how compersion can be developed and just thought I would email and ask if you have any advice or suggestions on ways this can occur, or any techniques or stories you might have that you would be happy for me to reference and include within my assignment. I'd be greatly appreciated. Excellent question. To start off, we should probably define compersion. Now, a lot of people refer to this to the opposite of jealousy, but I don't find that very useful. I define compersion as the non-sexual joy you take in seeing someone else happy. And that person can be your partner, your metamour, and for that matter, it can be someone that you're related to. It can be your sister or your brother or your son, daughter, kid, anyone. When you go to your kid's soccer game and know how really hard they worked and they win and you're happy for them, that's compersion. When you go to a friend's wedding and you're happy for them because they're happy, that's compersion. So you feel compersion all the time in everyday situations. We just don't call it compersion. Now, that being said, I know that, especially in the States, once you start having sex with people, for some reason, people think that all the rules change and all the emotions change. And sometimes they do. So let's just accept that you probably can feel compersion, probably already have felt compersion, just maybe not within your poly relationship. If you've been happy for your kid or a friend, then you have basically felt compersion. So now's a chance to ask, what is keeping me from feeling compersion? And I would suggest that most of the time that's probably going to have something to do with jealousy or some type of insecurity that you're feeling. There's something that's telling you this isn't right, or I should have that, or I'm afraid. So if that's what's blocking you from feeling compersion, then start with that first. And we have a number of tools available online to help you deal with your jealousy. I'll provide links to them in the show notes. There's the discuss, distract, do. There's the and then what exercise. So I would suggest starting with those and seeing if you can figure out if there is jealousy or some type of insecurity, and then deal with that emotion, because that could be what's blocking you from feeling compersion. Also, start noticing when you do feel empathy for others and what triggers it. Start noticing when you're happy for somebody else and start noticing what triggers it. So I do think that if you take the time to address any insecurities or jealousy that may be hindering you, and if you start noticing how you're already feeling compersion in your life for others, it'll be a little easier to start feeling compersion within your relationship. All right, I've talked for a while. I did the hard part. I went first. So now Lusty Guy gets to come swoop in and sound really smart.
Wow, no expectations though. Well, like Minx, I'm going to start with the definition of compersion. And this, like I was referring to earlier, is my chance to get on my hobby horse, my high hobby horse, for the record. Speaking of being on a high hobby horse, compersion is placed on a very high pedestal in the poly community, and I am here to knock that shit down in the mud.
Because that's what you do.
Because that's what I do.
From your hobby horse.
That's right, charging on my hobby horse. Somebody get the William Tell overture. That should be my intro music. In any case, here's the thing. We tell ourselves that compersion is this exalted state of joy when your partner goes forth and has rompous, adventurous sex with somebody that you never get to have, and you feel wonderful about it. And if you don't, you're not poly. Yeah, okay, right. Fuck that shit. Compersion is simply, as Mink said, the joy induced in you when someone else experiences joy. That's it. Doesn't have to be your partner. Doesn't have to be sexual. Can be sexual, sure. Doesn't have to be. As a matter of fact, if you smile when you watch dogs run, you're experiencing compersion. If baby giggles make your heart light, that's a flavor of compersion. Whenever you see someone or something having a good time, if you can't help but tap your toes a little bit and have a good time with them, you're experiencing compersion. Now, by the way, if you never experience this, you can still be poly. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But I suspect most of us at some time can remember a point in which we were legitimately happy for another being's happiness. Even if it was just that little kid that pumped their fist when they got the ice cream cone. Watching kids with sweets is a great way to experience compersion, by the way. Kids and dogs, man. My two favorite examples of everything. So, how do you exercise your compersion muscle? The same way you exercise every other muscle. You use it over and over again in fun ways that don't leave it overused. So, as Minx was saying, look for things that make you feel happy for others and expose yourself to that. Imagine yourself feeling that way about your partner when they do something that makes you feel poorly now. Practice it in your mind. Practice it with small, unthreatening situations with your partner. If maybe you're going to get happy when they win a video game, well, watch them win a video game and experience that joy with them. Whatever brings them joy outside of the context of the things that you feel insecure of, experience that with them. Practice and build it up, and then slowly introduce the contexts that give you feelings of apprehension. And you'll be able to eventually lift that load. A step at a time, and around the world we go, or a bite at a time, and we eat the elephant. Incrementalism is something that I didn't come to until I had reached, 35 or 40. Thanks to Elle, I got there eventually. I never would have without her. But there's a lot to be said for it. So you just practice your compersion incrementally, and you'll get there.
And by the way, thank you, Jade, for asking that question. I can't count how many times we've been asked about jealousy. I can't even remember a time that we've been asked about compersion.
Yeah, and this whole notion that jealousy is the opposite of compersion, again,
I don't like that.
It's not true. Security is the opposite of jealousy.
True.
And if you have something to say, please join the online conversation, the community on Facebook at facebook.com/polyweekly, or Twitter at polyweekly, or at cunning.minx.
Our first bit of feedback is from a listener in Vancouver.
Hi, Minx. I'm just calling from Vancouver, Canada. I've been listening to you for quite a few years now, and you've seen me through quite a few relationships and have helped me out through many a times, and I'm greatly appreciative for all of your advice that you give. And I just want to say thank you so much. As an Indigenous woman, I really appreciate and support you talking about politics on your show. The pandemic has also been quite challenging, so thank you so much for coming back. It's lovely to hear your voice. I wish the best for the two of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So glad to hear it.
And next, our friend David Wheeler sent in his audio review of The Smart Girl's Guide to Polyamory.
This is David Wheeler, and here's my quick review of The Smart Girl's Guide to Polyamory by Dedeker Woodston. I read this book in my continuing effort to keep up to date with new books about polyamory. Spoiler alert, I'm not close to keeping pace. While it is primarily written for female-bodied and female-identifying persons, it did offer a space for male-identifying persons as well. That said, I am not the best person to offer their views on this book, so I would welcome the views of others who've read it. I found it very well written. It offered some new ideas on how to work with jealousy that I had not considered in the past, sitting with it in meditation and breaking down the reasons you are feeling what you are feeling, and I think I'll try this when jealousy arises. It had a fascinating overview of some of the forms of ethical non-monogamy that have been practiced in North America, from the practices of indigenous peoples to the Oneida community and Carista community, with a quick stop with the Bloomsbury group that I was unaware of. The quote that I enjoyed the author mentioned about the Bloomsbury group is that the Bloomsbury group was living in squares, painting in circles, and loving in triangles. They are fascinating. I also enjoyed the discussion of feminism and the importance of intentionally coming out or not, and the potential benefits of legal rights for polyamorous. I think that this book is an important addition to poly literature. Though it is a primer, it offers an important view into polyamory that may be more useful to many female-bodied and female-identifying people in the community. It is very inclusive. I hope that you will take the time to read this book and offer your reviews.
Thanks, David, and we'll provide a link to that in the show notes. It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by lovely polyamorists everywhere. S writes, I have a definitely happy poly moment. My metamour, saved my life last week. A little backstory. My meta and I hated each other for over a year. Her and our husband actually split for a while, and we both had a lot of personal growth, like not wishing the other one be hit by a bus anymore.
That's good personal growth.
That's great personal growth.
I support that, yeah.
I think you should probably not get in a relationship with somebody you wish would be hit by a bus.
Yeah.
Before we could really be a family. But this year, partially because of the legalization of cannabis in our state, rock on, legal weed.
I also support legal weed and the positive effects it's had on my relationships for sure.
As do I. We've become very good friends and truly family. This was particularly helpful as last week when I went unconscious and non-responsive, she was there to get help and perform chest compressions. She literally saved my life. I'm getting goosebumps.
Oh, you are?
This.
Look at that.
I am. I totally did. That's moving. That's scary. If you've ever been in a situation where you didn't know what to do and you had to perform chest compressions, or at the very least call 911, yeah, that's a tense situation. She continues, I spent a week in the hospital and am recovering now. After I came home from the hospital, I found she had made me homemade cannabis and herb-infused sugar scrubs to help with my skin issues from the dry hospital air. I really felt helped and loved and part of the family. That's like the best happy Poly moment ever.
That could be like an episode of a sitcom, actually. Could you see that arc, the character arc there? We go from hating each other to getting high together to saving a life to being friends forever. That's totally like an episode of Friends.
I love it. I love the cannabis-infused sugar scrub as a little thank you gift and welcome back from the hospital. That's amazing.
Yeah, that is a great happy Poly moment. Thank you for the smiles. And by the way, so glad you're on the recovering side.
Yes.
Many, many hopes that all continues to be well with your health. Okay, and our next happy Poly moment comes from R. R writes, my partner, T, he, him, and I, she, her, have recently started living together. T has years of poly relationship experience and has been amazingly supportive and patient while I learn. We're both dating separately and don't have any other serious partners yet. T asked if I would be comfortable with him having a date over to our place for the first time. I asked her time to process, but quickly realized the anxiety I was expecting didn't come. We talked about logistics and then about our relationship, and I've never felt more trusted and loved. I had been open to poly from the beginning, and I had doubts that my anxiety would make me too unhappy to pursue this relationship style long term. Talking last night with T was the first time I really believed that I am strong enough to pursue polyamory in a happy and healthy way. Big thanks to you folks and to my amazing partner. Thank you so much, R. Well done, R, and take a big dose of that thanks for you who are in fact doing all the heavy lifting. Brava.
You just said take a big dose of that, and I swear I thought you were going to say cannabis.
Well, that too.
Take a big dose of thanks and pride and cannabis, if it's legal in your state, of course, or country.
Or if it's just really good.
Well, that about wraps it up for today's show. I want to give a shout out to our Poly Weekly Playmates for their generous donations throughout the year, and in particular this week. We are a free resource. We've helped hundreds of thousands of people navigate their introduction to and continued success with polyamory, and your donations keep the podcast free for everybody, both inside and outside the community. Thanks for listening, and remember,
it's not all about the sex. Crow music?
Exactly. You put like crows squawking for your intro.
That's not bad. That's not bad.